I still remember the screams. They were loud, piercing, like they could tear the night apart. I had never heard anyone scream like that before, like they were being dragged into something dark, something they couldn't escape. Her name was Oma. She was only 14 when it happened. I knew her well, the whole village did. She was always quiet, always helping her mother in the fields or fetching water from the stream with the other girls. She had a kindness about her that made you feel safe, like she understood life in ways most of us couldn't. But none of that mattered when the debts came calling. Oma's father, Nonko, had borrowed money from Chief Obi. I don't know the details of why, but everyone knew the chief had given him a lot of money to save his farm. There were rumors that Nonko's land was cursed, that it had stopped producing crops for years. Whatever the reason, the chief's money helped him for a while. The land began to flourish again. Nonko, proud and relieved, believed his luck had turned. But then, one bad season followed another, and soon, the debt became too much to repay. Chief Obi was not the kind of man to show mercy. He was a large, intimidating man who ruled over our village with iron fist and cruel eyes. He had everything a man could want: wealth, power, land, wives, but it was never enough. He enjoyed watching people squirm, knowing they had no choice but to beg him for favors. And once you owed him, you were as good as his. Nonko was no exception. When the chief came to collect his debt, Nonko was desperate. His farm was barely hanging on, his crops failing again that year. He had no way to repay what he owed. And Chief Obi, he knew this. He knew from the start that Nonko would never be able to pay him back. But that's not what the chief wanted. He wanted Oma. "I can give you my land," Nonko pleaded when the chief arrived with his guards. "Take the farm, my goats, everything. But leave my daughter out of this." The chief simply laughed, that deep, mocking sound that sent chills through your spine. "I have enough land, old man," he said. "But your daughter, she will serve me well." I was there that day. I stood with the other villagers, watching, powerless to stop it. None of us could. You didn't cross the chief. Not if you wanted to keep your life. Nonko wept, fell to his knees, but there was nothing anyone could do. Oma stood behind him, her eyes wide with fear, her hands shaking as she clutched her mother's waist. I'll never forget the look on her face. It was like she had already died inside. The chief took her that day, dragged her away while her mother screamed and tried to fight the guards, but they were too strong. Nonko just sat there, on his knees, staring at the ground like a man who had lost everything. And in a way, he had. Oma became the chief's fourth wife. She was so young, barely a woman, but the chief didn't care. He paraded her around like a trophy, showing her off to his friends. They would visit his compound and laugh, whispering about how he had taken a child as a wife. And Oma, she just faded away. The girl who once smiled at everyone, who used to hum songs while walking in the fields, disappeared. The first few months after the marriage, we would see her sometimes when we went to the chief's compound for one reason or another. She didn't speak. She didn't make eye contact. She was like a shadow, drifting through the world without really being part of it. Then the bruises started to show. It wasn't long before we noticed them. Dark marks on her arms, her face, sometimes hidden under long sleeves or headscarves, but you could still see them if you looked close enough. The chief was beating her. We all knew it, but no one dared say anything. What could we do? He was too powerful. He owned the village, and everyone in it. One day, I saw her at the market. She was there with one of the chief's older wives, fetching food. I don't know why, but I called her name. Oma, I said softly, hoping for a response, any sign that she was still in there somewhere. She looked at me for the briefest moment, her eyes hollow, her face blank. Then she turned away like she didn't know me at all. It was like the Oma we once knew was gone. Months passed, then years. The chief's cruelty didn't stop. If anything, it got worse. Oma was never able to bear him a child, and that enraged him. He would beat her for it, blame her for his own failures. We would hear her cry sometimes, late at night, drifting through the village like ghosts. It was unbearable. One night, the scream stopped. The whole village knew something was wrong, but no one spoke of it. We all feared what we might find. A few days later, rumors spread that Oma had fallen ill. They said she was too weak to leave her room. Her mother tried to visit her, but the chief refused to let her in. And then, just like that, she was gone. I don't know what happened to Oma in those final days. Whether she took her own life to escape the pain or if the chief finally went too far, we never found out. Her body was buried quietly, without ceremony, in a corner of the chief's compound. No one dared to question it. Her father, Nonko, withered away after that. He blamed himself, of course. Everyone knew he did. He stopped coming to the market, stopped working his farm. He would just sit outside his house, staring at the chief's compound in the distance, a broken man. He died not long after Oma. Some say the chief still hears her cries at night. I don't know if that's true, but I hope it is. I hope Oma's spirit haunts him until the day he dies. She was too young. She deserved more than a life of pain and fear. But in the end, this village, this world, failed her. We all did.